So in this video, we're going to do a quick unboxing of the Nikon Z8, which is brand new for me, and talk a little bit about why I decided to go with the Z8 versus the other options available from Nikon and their mirrorless systems, and also a little bit about why I'm transitioning from Fujifilm, or at least considering transitioning from Fujifilm. So let's get into it. Very excited about having received this on Friday, and I can't believe actually that I waited 3 days before I tore into the large box from B&H. Part of that was because I wanted to get this shelf built behind me. Secondly, had to get some things with the setup and the video and the camera and the lighting and different stuff kind of figured out in my relatively minimalist space currently that I'm shooting content in, and then of course I'm not in a huge rush because it's very snowy and cold here, and I hate the winter. And I currently don't have any opportunities to do a full testing of this camera. So, but thankfully in the next week or two, I will have a plethora of opportunity to fully test out this camera. So there will be another video coming on the Z8 and my impressions after using it. I'm gonna guess that between the photo shoots I have lined up in Florida, as well as an event that I'm doing, a 2-day event that I'm covering, I'll be able to do like a 10,000 shot review, something like that. I say that kind of humorously because I suspect that 10,000 shots is gonna be pretty conservative. I tend to shoot a lot, and of course this thing is a beast when it comes to speed mode, so I'll have to be thinking about how to throttle it back a little bit probably as well. So just to give you a little bit of backstory, I've shot a little bit of everything over the years. I actually started off with being a Pentax shooter in their digital SLRs. Loved Pentax for a lot of reasons. A lot of reasons I left that system, and maybe I'll do a video on that in the future. But moved to Fujifilm, and I've absolutely been loving the Fujifilm system. I love the size, I love the weight, I love the options available. I like my current setup pretty much. There's just some things that really irk me about the Fujifilm system and then have me looking at other options. You know, it's not always gonna make your photography better by going from a crop sensor camera to a full frame sensor camera. But I think in this case, it actually might be the case for me, partially just having to learn new equipment and the things that it's capable of doing and the way that I set it up and creating some new muscle memory around this system. But also I think I'm kind of at a place where I would actually see somewhat of a step forward and increase in quality going to a full frame sensor. So we'll see if that's the case. But yeah, started off Pentax, went to Fujifilm. But I've also dabbled over the years with Nikon and with Canon. I actually bought a Canon camera here not that long ago. I'll do another video on that. And had a Nikon D750 and had a Nikon D700, still have the 700. And so I mentioned in my other video briefly, but before we get into the box, because that's really, it's going to be the fun part for me, but you guys have all seen the Z8, you know what it looks like. So I want to tell you a little bit more about my thought process. Maybe you're on the fence as to which Nikon you should get. Maybe you're trying to decide which Nikon camera is best for you, or just changing systems in general. First of all, of course, the big challenge for me is that it's a big cost investment. So I'm pretty deeply invested in Fujifilm. I should have counted before I started this video, but I have at least 8, if not 10 lenses with Fujifilm. I have 2 bodies currently. I have the XT3 and the XH2. I've had the XT2, XT1, I've had an X Pro 1, I've had an X100, I forget which version of that camera. I've had the XS1, I've had the XT30, I think, XT20 for sure. So I've had a lot of Fujifilm cameras that I've bought and sold and tried out and utilized over the years. And like I said, I'm pretty invested in the system. I have a lot of extra accessories for the Fujifilm system as well. and it's a big change, and it's a lot of money if you want to fully transition over. I didn't do that with my initial purchase. You can see some of the lenses up here, some of the other gear. I'm not at fully transitioning. I don't have that big of a budget right now, but making at least the first step in that direction, and then we'll see where we go from there. The biggest things for my Fujifilm system that I wasn't 100% satisfied with, and there's probably 3 big ones. Number 1 is the autofocus system. I'm not going to belabor that because it's been adequate. It's been good. Right now I'm on continuous focus, shooting this video on the XH2. I think it's doing fine. I'm watching the little box bounce around. It seems to be catching my eye. Hopefully this is in focus because I don't want to have to redo this. But it's just been lagging, and I know that there's better autofocus performance, especially the stickiness of the continuous focus. I don't think there's any denying that the Fujifilm autofocus system is probably 3 to 5 steps behind the current competition. And it's kind of frustrating that they know the problem too, and they've been very slow to address it or fix it, or are running into barriers and actually trying to fix it. Maybe it's more of a hardware issue than it is a software issue. So that's kind of disconcerting. So that's the first reason. Number 2 is the lens ecosystem. It's pretty good for Fuji. There's pretty much every base cover that you need. There's not a whole lot on the long end, and many of the lenses are actually kind of been around for a while, so that's not real innovative perhaps on some of the lenses. The nice thing about the Fuji lenses though is that they are relatively small and lightweight, just like the whole Fujifilm system. So that's going to be a big change, kind of coming over to Nikon. But I'm used to it from the digital SLR world and those years shooting Pentax, etc. But there's some great little lenses, and some lenses that I'll have a really hard time selling if I do make the full switch. High probability there's going to be a couple lenses like the 35mm f1.4. Very old lens, but just has some magic to it, has some character. The 56 f1.2 killer lens. 16 to 55 that I'm using right now, although mine has some issues with it right now. So that's the second reason. The third reason is just kind of the mentality of Fujifilm these days. You know, they're not making as many cameras that are as photographer-centric as they are trying to be hybrid or video-centric. I know the world's changing. Obviously, I'm on YouTube right now. I never thought I'd be doing this. And I know more people want the hybrid option, but yet there's still so much specialness in photography, and Fujifilm really filled a niche there, and I feel like they've kind of gotten away from that a little bit, especially when it comes to their rear LCD screens. My XH2 has and I'd show you, but you guys know this, and I'm filming with it right now, but my XH2 has a fully articulating flip to the side screen. As a videographer, that's very handy. As a photographer, absolutely hate it. Well, then why don't I just go with an XT5? Well, the XT5, they decided to not make a battery grip for. I don't understand why in the world they did that. A phenomenal system that's great for prosumers. Nice to have that grip, especially with a super small body that it is. I love shooting vertical. I shoot a lot of vertical when I'm doing portrait work, fashion work, stuff like that. It's almost an absolute necessary thing for me to have a grip. Why they got rid of the grip on that as an option is just beyond me. So, you know, the flip out screen is a huge thing for me. That's very annoying. And I know it's, you know, something that this camera in particular, it actually was one of the deciding factors for me on this camera over the Z6 III, because the Z6 III is also a hybrid shooting camera. The Z6 III has a articulating screen that's off to the side. I might get one of those eventually, especially if it ends up if I replace the entire Fujifilm system and need a camera that can be my kind of go-to video camera, / hybrid travel camera kind of thing. I can work with it. I can make it work. I can still use it. It's not like it's unusable by having a side flip screen. It just annoys the heck out of me to have to look off center and have something protruding off to the side versus just straight behind the camera and the lens. Personal pet peeve, personal preference perhaps, but Absolutely hate it. So that's another reason that the Z8 checked another box. The other thing around mentality for Fujifilm that kind of annoys me right now is the fact that they have created artificial scarcity. And some of you may say this is just a conspiracy theory. They actually haven't done this, but the evidence points to it, and there's actually video out there of the Fujifilm executives basically saying that this is exactly what they did. Could they ramp up production? Yes. Could they add more capacity? Yes. Could they contract out more work? Yes. Could they hire more people? Yes. Of course, there's always a risk in adding more capacity and buildings and equipment, and I understand that. I work in a nonprofit that works with manufacturers. I fully get that. But when you have such a massive demand and you can't meet the demand, you have to do something. So option one is you can either make less product available and create artificial scarcity, or number two, you can increase capacity, meet the demand, still not like flood the market and have products sitting on the shelf. There's a balancing point there. But Fujifilm has decided that they're going to go and make this artificial scarcity. And basically, go online right now, just try to look up the various products that they have. Try to get your hands on X100 V or whatever the latest model is. Try to get your hands on the new XM5 or XM, whatever they call it, 50 or whatever it is. A camera that's kind of appealing from a video, second B-roll kind of camera, second angle kind of video camera. Super small size, seems to have great video features. Not available anywhere. I can't get it at Adorama, can't get it at B&H. Not available. If I can't buy it, how good's the gear? Lenses seem to be constantly back ordered. The 40mm pancake lens. Great little lens for street photography. Amazing little portable, makes your X-T3 and other cameras potentially pocketable. That lens is never available. So again, you could potentially say like, well, as soon as they come in, they sell out right away. No, they rarely come in. That's the problem. So again, Nikon, Canon, Sony, they don't seem to have any issues with this. There never seems to be a whole lot of issue with back ordering, discontinued. What's up with the GFX line as a side note? Like everything's discontinued. Surely something new is getting announced, but where are all the GFXs at? Anyway, which was a system I did look into and was tempted to do. So that's what led me to this camera. Those reasons are the reasons that I decided to go with the Z8. On the Nikon side, I did a ton of research around which of the Nikon mirrorless bodies I wanted to go with. Again, something that was equivalent to what I have in the Fuji system, but also something that was going to be a little bit future-proofed. So as opposed to buying a camera like the Z7 II, which was very tempting to me because of the high megapixels, great camera, checks a lot of boxes, has the LCD the way I like it, etc. But it's a kind of older tech, and apparently the autofocus is not the greatest on it. Maybe on par with Fuji, or maybe even worse than Fuji, where Fuji's currently at. So that kind of didn't check the right boxes there in that regards. And I wanted to, if I was going to spend money on a camera or consider changing systems, I wanted a camera body that could potentially last me for the next 4 or 5 years. So I also looked at the Z6 III. I've already mentioned about the side articulating screen that would have been just annoyed the heck out of me. The second big reason I didn't go with the Z6 III is the fact that it is only 24 megapixels. And I know some of you are going to say, well, Scott, 24 megapixels is way more than enough that anybody needs. Heck, 12 megapixels is good enough. And I totally agree. In most cases, I don't need the extra megapixels. But it's really nice to have it. On my XH2, if I'm going to a baseball game, I only want to take one lens with me. I take the wide angle lens because sometimes stadiums are picky about what you can take in. I know I can get that lens in most stadiums without too much issues. And I know that I have the ability to crop in. Maybe it's a landscape where ideally a slightly longer lens than the 16-55 would be nice. I have that crop ability. Maybe it's a portrait shoot and I'm like, man, I just love the way that the model positioned her hands and the way that the light hit her eyes, and I just want to crop in real tight on that, kind of a real tight in headshot, and maybe I'd gone like really wide with a full body shot. 45 megapixels provides that flexibility and that option. So that was a big thing for this Z8, was the 45 megapixels that's in here. And also that it is basically from everything I can read and see and hear, it's like the number 2, like the baby flagship camera of the Nikon system right now. You've got the Z9, way out of my price range, way more robust than I need. Yeah, it has the kind of the built-in grip, but there's times you don't want the grip. Z9's a beast. If I was shooting sports, maybe even wildlife, Z9 would be awesome. It'd be great if I had one day. Probably not, but the Z8 checked almost all the same boxes because it uses the same processor as the Z9. And apparently the autofocus, the buffer, a lot of other boxes that are similar to the Z9 get checked off with the Z8. So that's why I went with, another reason I went with the Z8. And yeah, size, weight, ergonomics are apparently great. Why don't we go ahead and find out? So I'm really excited to jump in here. I know I've talked a lot, but hopefully that gives you a little bit more than just a typical unboxing of just pulling out and going, ooh, nice camera. Hopefully it gives you a little bit more insight into why I considered the Z8 versus other options, as well as my thought process around Fuji, the Z8 kind of transition. So with that, let's see what the initial reaction is to what's inside this magical box here. Very expensive box here. So hopefully it's good packaging with as much as they charged, but user's manual, probably won't use that at all. I've got YouTube, I've got other content or places to be able to find that stuff. Some other forums here that are probably important I'll check out later. Do have a charger in here, which is great because another thing with Fuji, some of their cameras, they actually don't ship with chargers anymore. What's up with that? Like, I want to be able to charge a battery externally while I'm using another battery inside the camera. So I'm glad this came with it. I would have bought one anyway if there wasn't one in there, but some little accessories of some sort, I'm sure, some cables, Nikon camera straps, which I probably have a bunch of these laying around because I always forget to ship these when I sell a camera. And I frankly never use the straps that come with cameras. I'm usually using some other crossbody system or something. It does come with a battery, which is nice. We'll see if it's actually charged when I put it in the camera, because a lot of times you do get these and they're already fully charged or partially charged, which is nice. But I did buy 3 additional batteries. One actually came with the bundle that I got with B&H, and then also it came with one. So I have 4 batteries for the Z8, probably overkill, but it's nice to have some backups, especially since I have some events coming up. And so here we go. Here's the Z8. Initial reaction is it's heavy, but it's not like over the top heavy either. It seems to be kind of a nice balance of weight. We'll see after carrying it around for a full day if I feel the same way. But initial reaction is, yeah, it's heavy. It's robust, but it's not my D700 either. I mentioned before I have a D700. One of the reasons I don't use it that often is just the size and the weight of it. So there it is. I will say initial reaction, I love the fact they put a protector on the screen. One thing I do like about my XH2 is I can fully articulate that screen out, spin it around, and close it so I can keep, basically protect the screen when I throw it in a bag or it's not being used. That's obviously not going to be an option with this, and this protective screen is obviously going to come off, but that's probably not that big of a deal. Yeah, initial reaction is that I've got medium-sized hands. I wouldn't say my hands are huge. They're pretty big, but they're not tiny either. So I think it's a pretty nice, it's a little bit big for my hand as far as the grip, but I think it's nice. Probably when I get a big lens on this, I'll appreciate how chunky and large this lens is, or this grip is. I suspect that's part of that is also to accommodate the size of the battery. Although it's about the same size, actually. The battery's about the same size as the XH2, so it doesn't need to really accommodate that much extra space in the grip. But yeah, initial impressions are that the camera appears to be robust, and oh, look at that. That's the way a screen should be when it comes to photography. So that's a big reason I got this camera. Obviously one of the things with a new camera system is going to take some time is just muscle memory. remembering where all the buttons are, getting comfortable with I'm a back button focus person, so getting comfortable with my thumb naturally falling on where that autofocus button is on the back, being able to change focus points on the back, customizing the buttons. This actually does have 2 custom function buttons on the front of the camera, if you didn't know that about the Z8. So that was actually pretty appealing to me too for quick changes. And it's got a diopter on here so I can change that. The viewfinder supposedly is really fantastic on this camera. It's also, the other wild thing about this camera, this might be one of my last points I touch on here, is this is actually the first camera that I think I might have ever owned that doesn't have a mechanical shutter in it. And honestly, that gave me a little bit of hesitation because I don't know why. Maybe it's just the comfort of knowing that you've got the mechanical shutter or the sound of the clack as it opens and closes. But so that's going to be a little bit of a change. I think the nice thing that set me at ease was the fact that this supposedly has no blackout time in the viewfinder. So there's no like delay or very minute that you can almost not even discern it in the viewfinder, which is great. And then secondly, just the longevity, going back to that idea of having this camera being a workhorse for the next 5, 6, maybe 7, 8 years. I heard a wedding photographer the other day, I don't shoot weddings, but a wedding photographer that said that he was almost at 1 million shots taken on his Z8. And if you think about a traditional digital SLR or even another mirrorless camera with a mechanical shutter, you start to get into 250, 300,000 shots on it. You start to get a little leery. If you were, I don't know about you, but I would never even consider buying a used camera that had 250 or 300,000 shots on it. If so, unless I got it like super cheap. But that's not an issue with this camera. You can literally shoot for 15 years on this camera, and in theory, there's nothing that's gonna go bad with it unless you drop it or severely damage it. So yeah, I'll be watching a lot of YouTube videos over the next couple of days on how to set this up and different tips and tricks of focus systems and buttons and menus and figuring out how to kind of giving myself a crash course on how to get the camera set up the way that I like it. And I'm sure that as I start using it next week, my first shoot is on Sunday, which is almost, I guess, 6 days from now. I'm sure that after that first shoot, I'll be spending time on YouTube that night, still trying to figure some stuff out, making some adjustments, reassigning custom buttons to things that I will use more frequently. But yeah, it feels great, very solid camera. It's kind of nice to know too that you've got a camera that, you know, can take a little bit of beating, can take a little bit of bouncing around. I don't drop my gear, I'm not real rough on my gear, but it's nice to know that if you bump it, it doesn't feel like a toy. It feels like an actual professional camera that's robust. I don't know how much weather sealing this thing has, but I'm assuming it does. My Pentax, by the way, was the greatest weather sealed camera maybe of all time. It was a beast. Pouring down rain, didn't matter. But I'm very excited about diving into the Nikon system. Feel free to leave a comment down below if you want to give me any tips or tricks on how you set up your Z8 or features that you can't live without. Or maybe what my next camera body should be. Should I pair this up with a ZF? So I'm a little bit kind of reminiscent of my Fuji system. Should I pair this up with a Z6 II? Or should I just go ahead and get a second Z8? So I've got 2 Z8s to carry around and have fun with. So kind of doubt that'll be the case. But anyway, that's my unboxing. Hope these insights were helpful. I appreciate a like, any comments down below, and of course a subscription. And I hope to continue to make great content for you guys. And I will see you later.